Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. So we got another edition of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt here at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo. And we're lucky enough to be with Josh Coursey with Muley Fanatics Foundation. And Josh has been gracious enough to help support our efforts, along with Scott Hampel out of Colorado, on what we did on Proposition 127. And, you know, give an introduction a little bit about you, Josh. I mean, you've told everybody dozens and dozens of times who you are and what you do, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, too, and I thank you for what you do and how important your messages are, and just your engagement and involvement. Really, that's our message: is get involved, get engaged. The things that we care about, the heritage that we have. It didn't happen overnight, but boy, it sure feels like Rome wasn't built overnight, but it can burn down overnight.
No, that's for darn sure. Shane Mahoney came to the Capitol in 2022, and he did one of the partners conferences with us. And when he did a presentation, the Sportsman's Day at the Capitol, he got up on the podium and he said, wildlife does not happen by accident. And he has said that over and over and over. And not only do I try to coin that phrase, wildlife advocacy does not happen by accident. And individuals like yourself and the organizations with Muley Fanatics and so forth are instrumental, not just in mule deer propagation and sustainability and perpetuity, but a lot of what goes into one species benefits dozens and dozens and hundreds of species and the landscape and habitat combined.
Yeah, that's very accurate. And I'll tell you, our 13-year history we established in 2012, I think out of the gate, and the motivation that we had was really eccentric and focused to the biological sciences of conservation. Landscape level habitat treatments, knowing how important a healthy habitat is, migration corridors and maintaining connectivity of migration, and ultimately the biological impacts that affect the sustainability of healthy herds. But I think over that duration of time, I think our optics started to change about 5 or 6 years into that, recognizing that there's really three sciences when it comes to wildlife management and conservation. Biological sciences certainly play a role. But if you're missing the mark in the social sciences and the political sciences, then you're really missing the mark altogether. Because the three complement each other. Each of them are equally an intricate part of the process. And if all your eggs are in one basket, then you're doing a disservice to the other two. And when you talk about social sciences and political sciences, I think sometimes those impacts are so much more to the forefront of seeing change and impact, where biological sciences sometimes take many, many years, sometimes beyond your own living years. I mean, it's like you're planting a shade tree for something you'll never benefit the shade of.
The next generation might. You might cuss it as you got to rake the leaves off of it, but you might not be able to get the benefit of the shade off of it.
That's right. But the political sciences, you can look how fast a decision can impact that. You know it firsthand here in Colorado.
Yeah. The agenda-driven politics has gotten to a point to where social science is from some people's perspective, some organizations' perspective, some ideologies, that social science is the way that you manage wildlife. And while it might be a component, it doesn't really do much for wildlife. It's more for the emotional, for the people part of it. We need to understand that is a significant portion, but you can't manage wildlife off of social science alone.
No, and I know you've coined the phrase, you've heard the phrase. It's been talked about a bunch, particularly with Proposition 127, that ballot box biology. That's a direct correlation of social sciences and political sciences affecting the biological sciences.
Yes.
And so I think as a community of people, sportsmen and sportswomen, if if there's a takeaway that we need to recognize on our timeline of the time of history right now, is we have a duty. We absolutely have a duty to be engaged in the political and social sciences. And you're a great ambassador for that.
Thanks. Well, I mean, sometimes that's, you know, if you stand at the front of the line, somebody's going to push you farther. You're just hoping that you look behind you and there's enough people standing behind you to keep pushing you and to support your efforts and cause. And we've been lucky, but we've also generated a significant amount of enthusiasm. But organizations like Muley Fanatics has been centric, and to be able to turn around and prop up organizations like CRWM or the coalition building effort that was so intricate and so imperative when we were fighting 127. And that transcended over to Ordinance 308 and 309 that the city and county of Denver voted on. And, you know, for those that don't know, you know, Ordinance 308 was a fur ban, and it had to do with fur products, but it was cowboy hats and fishing lures and Native American crafts. And the slaughterhouse ban was a meat production facility for lamb, the largest one in the western United States. But when you started putting Proposition 127 educational information out there, people in the city and county of Denver started to pay attention, because the urban side started to cross over into the rural side. People that didn't have anything to do with wildlife management started looking at, well, I wear a cowboy hat, I fly fish, I believe the Native Americans should be able to use those crafts, I eat lamb, I want to be able to continue to do this. I think that those sort of cross-pollination efforts between the ag community and the rural community and the sportsman community are probably something that, like here at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo, we need to get people to understand. It's not one, it's not two, it's all of it combined. And management and consumer social science and interest is part of that whole discussion. But it all connects in one way, shape, or form if you really get down and start doing the dissection of it.
It does. And when you look at the opposition and how it's exploited to be able to open the door to something that maybe not seem like it's a direct impact, there's a strategy there. And I think that's where having the optics to be able to see where is the attack coming from and what is the end game and what are some of the unintended consequences that maybe aren't being recognized. And I think there was a lot of that in just even how it's promoted. We've seen that with Proposition 127.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what we're trying to address, and it's a feel-good thing, and it'll rally a bunch of people that maybe won't do the deep dive to understand what's the next layer of impact. And it's significant. And you can't think that's by accident.
No. And I'm going to ask you, you know, you're in Wyoming.
Correct.
Muley Fanatics is based in Wyoming.
Right. We're headquartered in Wyoming, but we have chapters in 7 states, including a chapter in Virginia where we don't even have mule deer. I mean, they're 2,500 miles away from the nearest mule deer, but yet it's the recognition of those folks that live on the eastern seaboard that recognize their time spent and their dreams to come out west and have that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, or if they're lucky enough to come to multiple states out west, that they also have a role. And I think that's a role that all of us have as sportsmen and sportswomen. It may not be something we get to pursue every year, but when we do, we know we have a role of responsibility and stewardship to make sure that we're doing our part so it'll persist beyond our own living years. And I think that's a stewardship accountability that I think we need more of.
Well, that kind of goes in hand. I've had people turn around and ask, you hear about wild sheep chapters in like Mississippi or in New Hampshire, wherever somebody might be, and they go, why would they have that there? Well, it's because they have an interest in sustainable wildlife management and in perpetuity, whether they're going to be able to pursue it or not. You know, the Dallas Safari Club has a wide variety of individuals, but if you go to any one of the big shows, whether it's in SCI in Nashville, or you go to NWTF in Nashville, or you go to Reno for the Wild Sheep, or you go to Western Hunt Fest, Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake City, there's people from all over the country that enjoy supporting efforts to sustain big game populations in the western United States and Canada and Alaska. And for the average person that doesn't comprehend why you and I would want to go do something, there's sportsmen on our side of the fence that are like, why would somebody in Mississippi have a Wild Sheep Foundation, or in Virginia to turn around and have a Muley Fanatics Foundation? It's because we care about the North American model of wildlife conservation. We care about science-based wildlife management, and we care about sustainability of building those populations, knowing that they're appropriately taken care of to the best of our abilities, and organizations like you are strongly imperative to that.
Yeah, and there's many, and that's the message. It's not one. It's be involved with where your passion is, but recognizing the bigger picture of there's a heritage at stake.
Yes.
That if you do not have ambassadors that are at the forefront of that, it's potentially at a loss. And it doesn't take long before you lose that. I mean, I think Ronald Reagan said we're one generation away from losing freedom.
Yes.
Well, the same, I mean, you take that layer of freedom and you apply it to what we believe in our heritage, that is something that has come not by accident, as Shane Mahoney said.
Exactly.
It takes work. And, I think each of us individually have to look ourselves in the mirror, recognizing the value we put on this heritage as sportsmen and sportswomen, our wildlife resources, whether we're consumptive users of the resource or we're just enhancing our experience when we're in our wild things and wild places to be able to see wildlife and to know that it just doesn't happen. It takes work, it takes effort, and it takes us individually doing our part. Individually, that grows to a collective body of people nationwide that are supporting that. And I really, that's been a key message for us this year is let's look at what each of us are doing and then recognizing that it is truly individuals that are getting involved at the legislative level, within game commissions. Those are all individuals, and they're working within their own collective body. But where is our participation?
Exactly.
And can it be improved? Can it be enhanced? When was the last time somebody attended a commission meeting? When was the last time someone reached out to their legislative representative about issues that are near and dear to them?
Or, and I say this often, that if they know who their legislative representative is, if they know what Senate or House district they're in, if they know what congressional district they're in, that's not criticism, it's just a fact of the matter.
Right.
I mean, people coming to this show here said, we saw what you did and we supported it, but how do we get involved? Well, what district do you live in? Now, this is 17 months after we started the campaign and we won. What district do you live in? Well, I'm not really sure. Well, you went through an election cycle last year.
Yeah.
You should know. I mean, do you know who's cleaning your pool? Do you know who's servicing your vehicle? Do you know who your veterinarian is or your doctor? These other people that we're talking about, whether they're commissioners or legislators or congressmen and women, they're making decisions on behalf of us. It would really help us if we knew who those people were, whether we voted for them or not.
And that's not, you're right, that's not an insult. It's not a knock, but that's nationwide.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
run into that with people in all states that don't know that. And I don't know how we got to this point, but the point is we need to recognize that we don't know that collectively as a community, and that's a good starting place for people to be involved.
Well, and that's the joke that I make. I said, do you know your wife's hairdresser? No, but she does. And
Right.
I said, yeah, but she didn't elect her. She went to her and started paying her. I mean,
Right.
those are the things that I think, if you put it in layman's terms, it's a little easier for some people to comprehend that maybe I ought to start paying attention.
Right.
I mean, we took some young ladies last year to Sportsman's Day at the Capitol in Colorado during the campaign that we were fighting on 127. It was Initiative 91 at the time. But I invited some young gals that had never participated in that, mothers of two and houndswomen and barrel racers and professional women. When they got there to the Capitol, we had House and Senate floor resolutions on Sportsman's Day. And they said, okay, what are we supposed to do? And I said, well, you're going to get a chance to meet your legislator, and they'll be coming over and the girls were like, well, we don't know who that is. And I'm like, you're standing in their chamber. There's 35 of them in the Senate. All you got to do is look it up and figure out what district you live in, because when that person comes over, I want you to tell them that you are who you are and that you're a constituent of theirs, because right now you're in their territory. But they need to know that you stepped across the line to come in their territory, whether they're Democrat or Republican or not. Now those girls have indoctrinated dozens and dozens and dozens of the other young women and men to say, I felt really stupid because I didn't know the people that were making these decisions that I sat and drank a beer and griped about or complained about, because I just thought that they were going to do what I wanted them to do. it opened up so many eyes. But conservation is no different than legislation when it comes to opening up eyes, when it comes into doing something. If we can turn around and propagate a consistent message of engagement. I've said this, I was on 86 podcasts last year. I don't know how many I've already done this year. We started our own with this one with Through the Gates. But if we could get people to dedicate 4 to 8 hours per year per person, not at a fundraiser, not at a sports show, not at some sort of a barbecue, or not some sort of an action for Muley Fanatics or CRWM or RMEF or whatever. 4 to 8 hours a year just to turn around and write your legislator, go to a commission meeting, sit and listen to stuff for legislative issues, contact your representative or senator. 4 to 8 hours a year, 11 or 12 million sportsmen and women in this country, if they would just do that, we would be undeniably the most formidable opposition on the planet.
Right. Absolutely. And the nice thing about that, Dan, is we're not reinventing the wheel.
No.
The model is there. The North American model of wildlife conservation, it's there. It's rooted in science. At this stage of the game, we're asking for accountability to that. Yes. We're asking for sound science to be the application of how our wildlife is managed. And those processes, whether it's a NEPA process or an EIS, I think that's a frustration people have with the Endangered Species Act. And you look at grizzly bears in a state like Wyoming, Wyoming has been able to show through science time and time again they have biologically recovered. And in my mind, it should be the poster child for the ESA. Like, this worked. Yes. Here's the success of this wonderful law that brought this critter from near extinction to a recovered state. And then celebrate that and remove it. Yes. And know that, yes, the tool was in place in the toolbox to be able to implement, to protect that, and do what it was designed to do, not continue to move the goalpost. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. I think that's where the frustration has come.
Yeah.
And whether you're talking grizzly bears or wolves, I think that's where people just start to think that, gosh, this is so much bigger. No, it's really very clear. We just got to let science be science, and sound science has got to be the impetus to the decisions that are being made at the landscape level.
I want to back up a little bit, Josh. How did you get into this?
Really, it was passion. It was passion for what I seen growing up in Wyoming. I had done some time in the Army when I came back home. And when I left Wyoming, I didn't know that I'd come back to Wyoming. Born and raised in a state like Wyoming, you know the horizon is really big. And you want to see what else is out there. And my service in the Army allowed me to see a lot of other things, a lot of other places, and it was really only drilling into me how important and how special really where I was, that it really wasn't like that elsewhere.
You spend too much time other places, you go, I need to go back home.
I need to get back home. And I can tell you, as a 17-year-old that enlisted in the Army, a month into my senior year of high school, knowing that's all I had ever wanted to do, that 3 days after I graduated, I'd be headed to Fort Knox, Kentucky. I think I had even said it to a few people. I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
And then when you see what else is out there, you're like, oh, man, I had it really good.
Makes you wonder why you're coming to Denver for the Mile High Fish Expo. This is a great venue.
Oh, man.
Phil and Abe are doing a fantastic job. I hope it continues and it continues to grow. But Denver is the armpit of Colorado at this point. If you want to try to turn around and come here to do anything, the traffic, the infrastructure. It's not like what you and I would profess to like, and we're not advocating for conservation and habitat in Denver.
Right.
And the people in Denver typically aren't doing that as well for the most part. You get into states like Wyoming or states like North Dakota or South Dakota or even Utah or Texas or Oklahoma, there's a different ideology. Now granted, you've got urban corridors and you've got rural areas, but Wyoming itself, when you guys started Muley Fanatics, what was the vision of that?
Really, it was being exposed to a different organization and seeing that there was the potential for a different model. And Joey Fagel and I had led a chapter effort for the Mule Deer Foundation for 5 years. And we just, after 5 years, seen a different model where we could create something that would allow the people that were the boots on the ground level of the effort to be able to have a voice in where their money was going and to really measure the fruit of their own labor in their own backyard. So our chapters, they all retain 70% of the money that they raise, and through an all-volunteer project committee, they allocate those dollars so that folks that are supporting them, trading the most valuable thing we have, our time, in the way of a dollar to support something they care about, could be able to measure and quantify, this is what we're supporting, and we can see it. Not that, folks in Wyoming didn't care about deer in Gunnison, Colorado, or in Boise, in that area. Ultimately, though, those folks that are supporting these efforts, they wanted to be able to make a difference where they recreate, where they go to get their soul filled. And that was the model that started Muley Fanatic Foundation, and to empower people to have a voice, to be able to have a voice in how their dollars were spent, to be able to make an impact. And when you make an impact and you have action like that, it only furthers your interest to be ownership into the stake at what you're supporting. And, it's worked. It's worked very well.
So when Chris Journey, who's sitting over there right there with the Colorado Conservation Alliance, and I formulated the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, we were already serving on several different boards and committees. I've known Chris for the better part of 25 years. Same ideologies, but because of where he lives, because of the wolf issue in Colorado, he felt empowered that he had to turn around and take that underneath his hat and step away from some of the things that he and I started together. The reason I mention that is because, I was at his house on Saturday. We work intimately back and forth at so many different levels. When people hear you say about starting something else when you were part of MDF, the general concept is that to a lot of people that don't know, would maybe be unintentional consequences of unintentionally dividing and conquering ourselves. But it's only expanding the reach. It's expanding the network.
Exactly right.
It's creating a 14-leg octopus as opposed to an 8-leg octopus, because we are so conservation efforts go through peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows, and for a variety of different reasons. A lot of it is because it's volunteer. A lot of it's because it's different ideologies. A lot of it is because of aging out of some of the members that came on board for something else, and either maybe they passed away, maybe they moved, maybe they can't be involved in something as readily available as what they used to be. Maybe they found some new shiny object to get involved in, which sportsmen and women do historically, because rifle hunters often go to bow hunting, and sometimes bow hunting ended up going to rifle hunting. I know people that never hunted with hounds in their lives after this 127 went and bought hounds, went and bought dogs, because they said, I helped fight for this. Well, I want to see the inspiration behind this. Sportsmen and women historically have not done the best job of commingling the efforts and talking to the general public. We've talked to the choir a lot. We talk to ourselves in these venues. We have membership and volunteers and conservation efforts and boots on the ground stuff. But that middle of the road that doesn't hunt, that doesn't fish, that we're all trying to talk to when we talk about conservation and ballot initiatives and things, what do you see from your experience of how to continue to build that network to where we're talking to the same group with a consistent message from different perspectives? I guess that's part of the social science side we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think the way that we navigate that to move the effort forward is that we have to be inclusive. We have to reach out. Everybody knows somebody that doesn't hunt.
Yes.
And maybe they're tolerant of, I don't hunt, but I'm glad you do. But to really understand the value that we put on hunting and the responsibility that we have to the wildlife management, recognizing that hunting is a tool within the toolbox of wildlife management, how do we bring those folks to the fold? Maybe they don't want to actually be the hunter, but maybe they want to participate as an observer. Maybe that sparks their interest in having that intimate engagement, matching a skill set with the critters. And I think that's an opportunity that all of us, I think we should seek that out, but it's intentional. We have to be able to find somebody that we just think, that individual, no interest in hunting. And I can tell you a personal example of that. I turned 50 last year, and I had a colonoscopy done because my wife had said, hey, you're 50. Her father had colon cancer. It was it was an experience of emotion for her to watch that as her father went through that. She was like, early detection is key. visited with Dr. Chad Franks, who was recommended to be the doctor that I would pursue to take that effort forward. And he knew a little bit about me. I didn't know a whole bunch about him. He was just recommended that he be the guy I reach out to. And he said, I've always wanted to hunt, but I'm a little late to the game. He's 57, and he said, I don't want to sit in a class with a bunch of 10-year-olds taking hunter education at a 57-year age in life. And so there's this intimidation factor of, I didn't grow up in a hunting family. And I hear that a lot. I hear folks that say, I just didn't grow up in a hunting family.
Yes.
Even in Wyoming, oddly enough. And I think those are the opportunities we got to seek, and we got to say, you know what? Why don't we do this together? Mm-hmm. Why don't you let me share with you why I value this so much, and maybe that sparks your own interest to want to do it. Because there is a process. I mean, whether it's just starting at that level of taking hunter education, learning a little bit about the different gear and equipment to be able to protect yourself, to sustain the elements, but then the scouting. I mean, it's not just 1 week in the fall. It's the whole process. And then when you start adding the other layers to looking at hunt areas and draw results and applications and what do you want to harvest, and then you add in, your weapon, whether it's, I really like the idea of being able to get really close to an elk, and I want to hear that bugle, and I want to get involved with archery. I think hunters are the best source for being able to bring other new hunters to the fold. We just have to be intentional in doing it, and I think there's a lot of power in that. Just think of every hunter every other hunter even at that, or every 4 hunters if they brought a new non-hunter to the fold, what that would do for the industry.
And it's funny you say it and explain it like that, because in that context, I'm visualizing this vulnerability that you expressed, that you're giving him your body to turn around and see if you're healthy,
right.
The vulnerability that him to open up and say, hey, is this something that maybe you could help me pursue, or this is something I'm really interested in? I think that's that cross-pollination that I'm so proud of what I saw with 127, with the people that walked up that are expert marksmen or expert bow hunters or whatever, but they didn't know squat about ballot initiatives, about capital development stuff, about joint budget committees, about different committees at the Capitol, about legislative makeup and decision-making processes, the commission thing. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar in this, but we've got 3 lobbyists at the Colorado State Capitol. And when you turn around and see somebody that you really respect from a hunting conservation sector, and they have a deer in the headlight look like taking a kid to Disney World for the first time when it comes to the stuff of advocating for what they're doing, you talk about bringing those people into the avocational activity, but those could create ambassadors, even if they're not engaged at the Capitol or at the commission meeting or on the legislative side, as long as they're talking to other people, because how many people does that doctor see? How many people does that doctor influence because of his expertise? Those are things that I think that we don't capitalize on well enough, and it goes back into the advocacy side, Josh, is when people go to talk to their legislator, the legislator's interested in the constituents, right. Who they are, what they do, where they come from, their ideologies, their beliefs, their backgrounds. Because I look at the legislator as like your doctor. He needs to know a history about who his patient is, just like a constituent to a legislator.
Yeah, I mean, they're representing you. I mean, at the end of the day, they're your voice.
Yes.
And if you're silent, how do they know to be your voice?
Exactly.
And that's we all can do better. And I think recognizing that is the first step. And I can tell you, watching and being involved in the efforts that Scott Hampel led for our efforts in Colorado with Proposition 127.
Scott's a fantastic guy, I got to tell you that. I mean, he's just badass. He's
salt
part
of the earth.
Yeah, he's part of the Colorado Wildlife Conservation project that we formulated with 26 different organizations. You guys have kind of given him and the chapters here leeway to participate on a statewide level, but he is solid gold as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. The observation from Wyoming, I can tell you, is there was a lot of folks that were engaged to that issue because of our involvement through Scott and our efforts here affiliated with Muley Fanatics Foundation. But the bigger picture to that, Dan, is in Wyoming, what goes on in Colorado has to be paid attention to because it is coming to Wyoming. And
Yes.
I mean, when you look at our low population base in Wyoming with 540,000 people statewide, and you see, and we see it every election cycle. We see it on Fox News, whatever news is your news source. You see these areas that just get one color difference around these urban areas that are controlling the decision for the whole state. We don't have that in Wyoming, but what we do have is we have an ability to be influenced very quickly by efforts like that come into Wyoming. We had 27 new freshman legislatures in Wyoming this year. That's a significant number.
Yes.
When you look at the bigger picture,
you got 100 people or whatever, and then 27% of the population changes.
Yeah.
And
what ideologies are coming to the table? How many people have only been in Wyoming 2 or 3 years and are now in this position to be a voice and don't know the history of how the people in Wyoming have worked?
Well, look how many people are coming out of Colorado and other states trying to get away from whatever political agendas that they believe that they're being attacked by in other states. They go into Wyoming, or maybe they're going to Idaho. Hell, jokingly, but it's not a joke. Even the wolves that we dumped here, some of them don't want to be in Colorado either. They're coming back.
Trying to get back home.
They're trying to get back home and stay the hell out of Colorado.
Yeah.
Because we have a hell of a lot of people here, and the difference of what we have is not conducive to a lot of things that you and I have historically seen through the course of our lives when it comes to wildlife and wildlife management and sustainable management in perpetuity.
That's it. Yeah, spot on. And when you talk about the wolves in Colorado, I think Wyoming and everybody across that southern border knew what the implication of that reintroduction of the gray wolf to Colorado was going to mean.
It's not like there's a giant fence with concertina wire at the top.
No. And we knew, I think sportsmen have a responsibility. We live in a day and age where people are just so quick to want to put stuff on social media and showcase that. I think that's the other thing as sportsmen we have to be mindful of is what is the message that's being portrayed that the non-hunter gets to see but maybe doesn't understand. And that is also a responsibility that we have to be mindful of. How are we portraying ourselves? What does that look like to somebody? And is it furthering either their resistance to what we value, or is it inviting? And, that's a fine line.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com.
Extreme fine line, and it's complicated for people that don't play and they think that it's an easy solution to, well, it needs to be this or it has to be like that. And it doesn't have to be just sportsmen and women. It could be the non-hunter. And even what I consider the animal activist extremists, the anti-hunter, they don't understand the complexities often. They don't understand the complexities, and they try to simplify it because they look at it through their blinders. They're laser focused on their opinion, but their opinion doesn't have anything to do with the facts and the data and the statistics and 125 years of science-based wildlife management or 40 studies that have gone on or translocations, or they don't know it. It's just that I don't want you to do it. I don't think you're doing it right. And when you ask them about a suggestion on what their suggestion is, they don't have one because they don't know.
Yeah, that's so true. I had, Dan, this is a good example. 2 months ago, I was in the airport in Chicago at my gate, had a little bit of time waiting until they boarded, and I had a lady sitting across from me. I had a Muley Fanatic Foundation sweatshirt on. Sometimes looking back in retrospect, we may have done a disservice having this logo of a big deer, big rack. Of course, we like big racks. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
But the takeaway was this lady, in asking, what is that? What is the Muley Fanatic Foundation? with an explanation more geared toward conservation, certainly than hunting. Her takeaway in 20 minutes of visiting about this was, so is it safe to say you're trying to save them so you can kill them?
Yeah.
I mean, that simplicity of that thought process exists, and it's real, and you have to recognize that what needs to be able to have the opportunity to be explained is that there's nobody that cares more about those critters than hunters. And we have them and are continuing to work to be able to have healthy, sustainable populations because we care about them. Whether ultimately that results in us and our passion to want to take the resource in the fall, be involved in that aspect of wildlife management that allows for the culling of the herd to be able to be healthy. But that simplicity of you're just trying to save them to kill them, that's real. And when she said that, it would be easy to just kind of laugh that off and say, no, you missed the point. But the bottom line is she knows her own social circle and the own influence that she has within the people that she interacts with, which obviously is not people that care about conservation like I do.
Right.
And so how do you open that door to be a little bit more inclusive to help maybe be thought-provoking enough to plant a seed for someone to just think a little bit differently than what their blinders have allowed them to live all their days to this point? And I think we need to own that.
Well, and we found that through the polls that were created on 127 and through my involvement previously with the Colorado Wildlife Council and the messaging component that we I mean, it's one of two in the country, and we've been, that council has been around since 1998. But finding out that what I say doesn't necessarily matter, and what the opposition to my efforts say doesn't matter, we kept referring people back to the agencies, to the government agencies that are funded by taxpayer dollars in some states, mostly hunting licenses through a variety of different levels, that actually provide that wildlife management through the American funding model. When you explain it, we did it over and over and over. When I was presenting to Democratic caucuses, I mean, I was the only Republican in rooms numerous times last year with 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, 300 Democrats in the room because it was a presidential election year. So it was easy, and because of the friendly across the aisle bipartisan work that we've done at the Capitol, I got invited to a bunch of different places. And I thought, well, I'm going into uncharted territory here, looking like I look, talking like I talk, to be able to stand in front of a bunch of people that when you went to their dinner, there was a fish line or a chicken line, and then there was a vegan line. There wasn't a steak line very often where I went. There was damn sure not a wild game line. Right. But when I would get up and talk, 99% of the time, the last statements that I would make were, or if a question was given to me, I've tried to give you as much of logic and strategy as what I possibly can to get you to understand what happens in Colorado's wildlife management. But don't listen to me, and please don't listen to my adversaries. Listen to the experts. We've got 350 bona fide scientists, wildlife biologists in Colorado Parks and Wildlife, because every game warden in the state of Colorado has to have a wildlife biology degree. They're wildlife managers. Listen to them. Listen to the experts. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to the adversaries that are trying to propose these efforts. Listen to the experts. 99% of the time, and you can see that by the result on the election, that's what people did. Why are we turning around and having to be able to vote on this? Why do we have the chance to vote on this when we have this agency over here that's
a state-funded agency?
A state-funded agency by although it's funded mostly by sportsman dollars.
Right.
That's the American funding model. Most people that resonated with, and I think to your point, standing there in Chicago in front of the gate, say Illinois Department of Wildlife, 15, okay. So if you had the opportunity to try to circle the wagons on, what have we got? Probably 100 different wildlife sporting conservation organizations. How do we turn around and circle the wagons to get all of us to talk on a consistent message, not just to our choir, not just to our members, not just to the sportsmen and women and the advocates, but to the non-hunter, to get them to understand that what we do is for every single person, whether they're anti, whether they're non-hunter, or whether they're sportsmen and women.
Yeah, I think, that's and we got to be focused on that first and foremost. I'm glad you see it that way. the differences that divide us sometimes. I think being able to just have good communication, to talk about where our shared values, we all have it. It's the fabric that binds us all together. It is the love of the outdoors. It is the love that, when we talk about us as individual hunters, it's synonymous with the very word of freedom in my mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, we love that time. We love that experience. Our lives are enhanced because of those opportunities. And I think we all share that collectively. Whether you're big game hunters or you're waterfowl hunters, it is that opportunity to be able to be outside and to pursue God's creation and our role in being able to sustain that feeds us and fuels us to want to be involved. And it doesn't matter the organization. Whether you're involved with Ducks Unlimited or Turkey Federation or Pheasants Forever, hunters have their niche. Each of us do. I'm just a mule deer guy, but I love chasing elk just as much. I mean, elk's a staple meat at our table. I mean, it is good table fare for us.
It's not ranch raised domestic elk either.
and I think there are those layers that, and back to the doctor, that was his interest in hunting. It wasn't that he was fascinated with the idea of the shooting sports and the take of the actual harvest. It was, I want to have a healthier diet.
Yes.
And I'm really interested in this organic, naturally fed protein source on the landscape. And that was his interest. And I think that is where all of us, with all of the differences that we have, we can agree why we have this love, and that it needs to be exploited and shared amongst us all. And I think that will open the door for being able to either, some large organized conservation summit where we can realize the power that we have as a collective body and the collaboration that can be done. And that breaks down the barriers of division of, well, I can't wear that brand because I'm with this brand. And I'm not brand faithful to any of them. I'm a member of many organizations because at the end of the day, they're all doing something, including MDF, which, people try to put that on us. Like, oh, you guys must be against MDF because you broke away to go establish this. I'm a life member of the Mule Deer Foundation. If you're doing good stuff for conservation, especially for mule deer,
yes.
I want to be first in line to support it. Yeah, I think that's a...
What does the federal government have to play into the because, and I mentioned that because you got the government acts and the funding sources that come from sportsman dollars, but Pittman Robertson, Daniel Johnson, all this stuff that comes in, how does that transcend into the perpetual motion of wildlife management and the funding model of that? And what would happen if that stuff was degraded and eroded from a state level?
Yeah, and the flavor of conservation in the 21st century is collaboration. That's the flavor of the day. And it takes all of those partnerships, federal, state, NGOs. You look at, in Wyoming, for example, we have the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust that Governor Friedenthal implemented years ago. That pool of money and how that is leveraged with federal partners, BLM, Forest Service, to do landscape level projects. You look at cheatgrass, it's the cancer of Wyoming. It is ruining healthy habitats, but there are tools in the toolbox to be able to remedy or mitigate that. But it takes partnership. You're talking about an aerial application of a landscape with a vulnerability coming out of a bad fire season like we've seen in 2024. It's reactionary, but it has to be proactive enough to be timely, to be effective. And nobody, not a state, not a single entity can do that because of the magnitude and the diverseness of that. It requires partnerships. And that's how conservation works. I'm a firm believer it is collaboration by many to get the needle moved forward.
Okay, so you mentioned that we're working on stuff here in Colorado, and I've been, looking at me and understanding who I am. It's hard for people to realize or visualize what I'm willing to do to reach across the aisle. Do you see a point in time when anti-hunters and hunters can come together on a variety of different levels and put our differences aside and still fight the fight when we need to think that we need to fight the fight and actually do something constructive and collaborative while we're actually engaging in the fight.
Yeah, and if not, I think we wouldn't be very. I think we would be. It would be a shame if we didn't have those optics. I think we have to go into it with that idea in mind, because if not, nobody reacts to a defensive, alienation of keep you to the side because I know we can't see eye to eye. What we need to be able to do is, how can we see eye to eye? What is the common value that we can both find value in equally and share that to be able to have those efforts? And I will tell you, the Proposition 127 is a prime example. There was a victory there. There were a lot of people that were excited over that victory. But what was the impetus to that victory? It was, and I don't know, I'm sure you've made this connection in your own head. We seen what happened with the gray wolf and the lack of proactive effort that was needed to be able to defeat that measure. And so that inspired or lit a fire and created the ember to just have a little bit more fuel for us to get involved with 127. But do you think is that the finish line?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
And to think that the opposition is just going to tuck tail and say, all right, well, that didn't work. That's not how it works.
No, here in Colorado, they're already rearming, retooling. I think they've already opened up their draft and turn around and look at trade deadlines, and they're getting all their ducks in a row because they've got roughly 20 months left of this current gubernatorial administration, and they're putting key players in for the next move because they didn't like losing. And to them, and I think you could acknowledge this, correct me if I'm wrong, to them, a loss is still a fundraising opportunity because
Huge.
now we need to double down. See, you didn't support us enough to be able to get the money that we needed to beat these guys in Colorado, so double down and give us more, because not only are we going to do Colorado, we're going to Arizona, just like what they did at the commission meeting. We're going to Washington. We're going to Oregon. We need to double down. We need to turn around and divide and conquer the resources. That's part of their strategy overall. In the West, the Western United States is the epicenter of all of that.
The crosshairs are on the West.
Yes.
You're right about that. And it will create and it will enable them to solicit and increase their fundraising to levels that were not even within the realm of what they had prior to.
No.
It will expand that exponentially. And we have to know that. I mean, a good offense is a good defense. But to be disorganized or to rest on our laurels and say, oh, nope, we crossed the finish line. And I've even heard some of the folks over this weekend, man, we beat that by 10%. That was amazing.
Yeah.
10% is pretty small.
When you start,
1.5 million to 1.2 million.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a real big shift.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a big difference in perceptions of that too. They say that they've spoken and now they've woken a sleeping giant. We say that we kicked them in the ass and that we've shut them down. That's not the case. Nothing could be further from the truth on either end.
Yeah, not knowing exactly the think tank behind the opposition. I would think that there are folks out there that say we may have lost the battle, but we'll win the war.
Yes.
Because they're going to continue to march forward.
Yes.
And we need to know that. And so how do we do that? What does that look like? Is that just raising a lot more money ourselves and bringing more people to the fold? Certainly that's a part of it. It has to be. Unfortunately, it does take money to be able to be in this game.
When you're fighting people that are on payroll, like Center for Biological Diversity, for example, that filed the stuff in Arizona, there's 70 paid attorneys on their staff. When you look at the Humane Society of the United States, which now is a Humane World, what is it, a Humane World, Animal World, or what they changed their name. When you start looking at the paid staffers that are utilizing taxpayer dollars to take conservation efforts away, to shut down hunting and fishing agencies and organizations, you can see this juggernaut that's been created because it's a moneymaker. Anybody has a question, look at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's money that they invest into conservation. It's a drop in the bucket considering the oppositional money that's put in to shut hunting down completely, forgetting about the conservation.
Right. And back to kind of full circle on that, you have to be involved in the political and social sciences of conservation. To just be focused on the biological sciences, the impacts and consequences that can come from the political sciences far outweigh any effort that can be made in the biological sciences.
We got just a couple of minutes left. We're going to turn around and hand the booth back over to Guy DePlanche with Western Hunt Fest here at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo in Denver, Colorado, early April 2025. Josh, a couple quick questions. What's your favorite method of take?
With my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm just, my kids are grown and out of the house, and my daughter and my son-in-law are, they've been married a couple of years. They haven't started to expand their family, and I certainly look forward to that opportunity, knowing that it'll come eventually. But I kind of feel like I'm on a little bit of borrowed time of just being able to have still that time with my my young daughter, who she's 24 years old now, and it's just that experience shared in the field with her is special. So,
you rifle hunt or bow hunt?
Both.
Yeah. Waterfowl?
I've done some waterfowl hunting, but not a whole bunch. I live in western Wyoming, and we didn't grow up doing it, but I have all the aspiration to want to be able to do that. Turkey hunting wasn't a thing where I lived in western Wyoming, but I have some friends that are avid turkey hunters in eastern Wyoming, and so I'm interested in doing that. We have an opportunity in front of us to do that. I just love being outside.
Yeah.
But deer, elk, antelope, that's what we grew up doing.
What's your favorite caliber to hunt with?
Yeah, this is old school, but believe it or not, and there's a lot of trends that come with calibers. 6.5 Creedmoor a few years ago, 7 PRC, everybody's raving now. I am just a 308 guy.
Yeah.
I just am. I always have been. My dad always had a 30-06. When he passed away, I got that. It's a Sears and Roebuck 30-06. It weighs about 10 pounds with a Bushnell scope on it, and it's special to me because it was Dad's.
Yeah.
308 is where I'm at. Last year, I got a can. My wife had a good pronghorn tag, and she harvested a nice goat with a can, and I can see where that is a game changer for us. How have we not had this before?
Yeah, I was in South Africa real briefly. I was in South Africa this past summer when they were gathering signatures for the campaign, and there wasn't anything I could actually do. And everybody's got a can over there because you can go buy one at 7-Eleven.
At True Value, yeah.
But you got to apply for a firearm, but you can get a can
off the shelf.
Yeah, here you got to turn around and do the tax stamp and the background check and all the stuff for the can. Of course, we're getting to that point on firearms here too that we're going to have to start around and really start paying attention.
And if folks aren't paying attention to that, what's going on in Colorado? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, for a long time, it's always just been only in California.
Yes.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
You start to put something in the middle of something else, and it starts to spread out like locusts on a cornfield.
Yeah, and that again, that's a distraction that keeps us off the focus of what the real issue is. And there's a lot of misinformation, and I think that's where we need to be able to. I mean, when you talk about just the shooting sports, being able to invite those folks that don't understand it, aren't engaged to that, to come to the range. Well, I mean,
exactly.
You don't have to be shooting at a live animal.
Yeah.
Let's go shoot a paper plate.
Exactly.
And then let's see the difference of what it is shooting with a can and shooting without a can, and why shooting with a can has so many benefits.
Yep.
I mean, it's
mentorship
it's
and
exposure.
Education. Yeah, mentorship, education, and exposure and saturation, and reaffirmation of a constant message.
That's right.
Well, Josh, I appreciate you actually taking the time. I know you guys are busier than hell.
Yeah, no, it's great to visit with you. And again, I can't say this enough. There are times when folks like Shane Mahoney himself and his advocacy work for years, we've had him at a couple of events. He's one of those guys, when he speaks, you shut up and listen.
Yes.
Because he's dripping with wisdom and knowledge.
Yes.
That you can absorb like a sponge and be better for it. And I think that you've been catapulted. I know you went into this reluctantly to be this point man for these efforts within the state. But I think the state, sometimes you don't get to turn down service when service calls on you.
Yeah.
You ultimately get catapulted into these positions because there are people that know you can be a good messenger, and you have to be willing to do that. And you've done that, and you've done it well. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the kudos. It's not gone unnoticed, and we really appreciate the opportunity to continue to build an armament and a messaging conduit and mechanism. And I look forward to working with you and Muley Fanatics down the road, and anything that you jump into in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to us individually or collectively, because I think continuity and networking is the primary focus of what we're trying to do.
It is all about collaboration, and it takes an army. It really does. You said it. It takes an army, and if we can't get our heads wrapped around how important that is to be solidified and unified, to collaborate together, we're hurting ourselves.
Josh Coursey with the Muley Fanatic Foundation. Appreciate your opportunity to come in and rap with us a little bit.
Yeah,
I know our paths will cross at different levels, but we're here at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo. One of our updates that we've actually produced. We want to thank Phil Mendoza and Abe Aaron at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo. Also thank Guy DePlantier with Western Hunt Fest. And just look forward to working with you down the road, and anything we can do, reach out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Dan.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.